The internet is an amazing place in which anyone and anything can be famous by simply making content in social media. It doesn't really matter which content it is. It could be through tweets, through music, through videos or music videos, or a compilation of random paragraphs from bad fanfictions where Tails sit in front of you with a smug face to look at the tall vampire lady that you wish were chasing you right now. As long as there are people who look at it and thought, wow, that's kind of fun, those people will gravitate towards those content and hit that follow or subscribe button like it's no other. At this point, it's getting really tiresome in trying to figure out what the general public like these days. From what I gathered as I get out of my cave and head into Zoomer land, people are fascinated with Minecraft, which I'm not interested in, people who play Minecraft and speedrunners, which I'm even less interested in, and people who make creepypasta videos and just so happen to play Among Us with PewDiePie in a really deep voice, which I'm even less interested in. But that girl who tattooed his breath certainly is. These two individuals that I mentioned are getting a lot of traction in social media. Or at least that's what people say. I literally have no idea who these two people are until everyone talks about them and how they gain millions of subs. Now, before some of you fans of these two people pile at me, I brought them up not to hate on them, but to highlight the point that thanks to the internet, anyone can be famous for many different reasons, no matter how mundane or baffling they are. I'm using them as examples to highlight that you can, and why being famous is a power, and with great power comes great responsibility. This brings me to an interesting dilemma. The reality is fans work like chains. They're only as intelligent as their dumbest counterpart. The dilemma goes as follows. Would you rather be famous and have billions of followers that have about as much intelligence as a barking dog? Or would you have a small following but have followers who know a thing or two about proper manners and wouldn't psychotically try to dox you just because you haven't shown your face? Personally, I'm sticking to my small and comfortable following. Heck, I'm even surprised that I have followers and subscribers in the first place, and they're all very nice and intelligent people. I genuinely appreciate it, and especially those who still stay all the way up to this point. Thank you so much for watching, and also donating, which you can do through the links down below. But going back to my previous point, I'm not saying that it's impossible to have a large number of fans and most of them are cool people, or a small number of fans and all of them have the mental capacity of a raging infant. I'm just saying that generally, the bigger fans you have, the more noticeable their dumbest members would be. The chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Case in point, K-pop fans, fans of popular mainstream anime in general. Even Persona fans took the occasional L in social media, especially the fans of the fifth one. You've never heard of, say, Warhammer 40k fans making dumb takes on the internet because the hobby is a lot more niche and more complicated to enter than something like D&D, which has gotten so mainstream that it's trying way too hard to appeal to everyone with the dumbest possible way you can think of on the false pretense of inclusivity. As your content gets more mainstream and accessible, the fans are also getting more widespread. While it is definitely lucrative and profitable, the easier and more digestible your content is, the easier it is for morons to consume it, and easier for psychotic fans to be obsessed by it, especially fans who will scorn you for doing the character just slightly the wrong way. That is why the best way to gatekeep people is to make the media about as hard to reach as a 10-foot wall. I mean, yes, not a lot of people can access it, but at least those people can't make any significant changes to it, and you can preserve its artistic integrity. Actual artistic integrity, I mean. One that is not afraid of being an honest and stupid power fantasy crap that is about as well paced as its protagonist's endurance in bed. At least it's not hiding real-life child exploitation under the guise of social commentary. I'm getting on a tangent. My point is, being famous is nice and lucrative, but there are lots of risks being involved in fame. The more famous you are, the more people will look at you. People in groups tend to be only as smart as the dumbest, or at least the loudest. And so far, we're only talking about the fans. As you get more and more famous, you will also get haters. And depending on several factors, they will do their best to be as obsessively invasive as your psycho fans. Funny how the horseshoe theory also applies to obsessive fans and obsessive haters. Then there are the outsiders, who are neither fans nor haters and observe the situation with bafflement and disinterest like me. I'm less interested on the subjects on the topic and more interested on the topic itself. But there's a difference between a lack of interest and a lack of knowledge, and this article that I'm about to show you shows more on the lack of knowledge department. Ninja, the streamer, not the profession, got interviewed by the New York Times, and the interview confirms pretty much all of the things that I talked about previously, and that being famous is not all sunshine and rainbows, and that's the last thing that I want people to strive for. That doesn't stop all of those kids who want to be vloggers when when they grow up. The thing is, this interview is done from an outsider's perspective, and you can tell because some of the questions are the kinds of questions that only make sense if it's asked by a writer from a progressive outlet who has no idea how the internet culture works. I mean, it is from New York Times, who in our last video has made a tech panic that even Kotaku makes fun of, but it's still no less dumb. The first question being asked tells you everything you need to know about the interviewer.
Being watched live for hours day after day by tens of thousands of people while you're playing a video game is a deeply new and also deeply unnatural activity.
Deeply unnatural? Please point to me at which part of any of this sentence that you would consider to be deeply unnatural. Being watched live for hours day after day by tens and thousands of people for playing video games? Oh yeah, that's deeply unnatural. Whereas people who sat on their butt all day watching football on CNN or Fox News are completely freaking normal. Are you talking about playing video games and how it's deeply unnatural? Well, that's not really much of a surprise, especially from your last article where you look at kids playing video games during the pandemic and thought that it's a ritual to spawn Satan or something. And we're not even getting to the part where you say that it's deeply new. It's only new if you haven't gotten the chance of popping your head out of whatever cave that you're living in for the past 5 years, interviewer. But let's get back on the topic of fame. Putting the interviewer's illiteracy on the internet aside, Ninja speaks out in how streaming makes him super self-conscious, especially when the haters talk about how his move to Mixer was a dumb one when the platform got trashed into the bin. Then there are the annoying fans whom he read on the chat and replied to them, to which they went, "Wow, he said my name! Senpai noticed me!" etc. He's at least aware that this is just part of the internet culture, something that the writer seems to be completely baffled with. But this is where things get controversial. The first one is where he says that it would have been awesome if when someone said something threatening, you could find up the dude or the girl's gamertag on a website and find the person so that he can be reported to the parents. I mean, I get why that's a controversial statement, but it's a what-if scenario and not something that he's seriously suggesting. In fact, what he is actually suggesting is the next controversial advice. He talks about how you, as a parent, should parent your children when they're browsing the internet. I know that sounds very obvious, but here's the thing. The legendary superhero Captain Obvious is a presence that we desperately need in current year when the world becomes very confusing and the line between the truths and the lies are getting increasingly blurry. Case in point, Ninja telling parents that they should parent their children on their internet activities and saying that they're the ones who should be educating children about sensitive topics and not some doofus on the internet from whatever political spectrum you're on. It may seem obvious, but you wouldn't be surprised in the amount of parents who would casually give their credit card details to their children and let them spend thousands of dollars on video games that they have absolutely zero clue in how to deal with. And even if we restrict their access and these devious children are actually stealing it behind our back, we have many different ways to monitor the notifications of our credit card expenses, but there are loads of parents who don't even know how to access their email account and turn on their notifications despite their credit card purchase notifications being sent right there. And even if these children have no idea how to operate a credit card and spend absolutely zero cash on anything they see on the internet, they still have to deal with the problem of internet culture in general. If there's one thing that tech illiterate parents can't comprehend, it's the internet culture. They're not gonna care about what their children are consuming on the internet as long as it keeps them happy and occupied, pretty much turning their expensive gadgets into their new parents. The moment they turn their phones and tablets into their new parents, the content creators that they watch are gonna be another member of that children's parenting. No thanks to current year lockdowns forcing these parents to hand over the internet to children as it becomes mandatory for their education. Regardless, I have zero sympathy for parents who have opinion X complaining that their children are having opinion Y thanks to the internet when they themselves are giving them the freedom to access those content. Even to the parents who neglectfully let their children spend hundreds of dollars on video games. If they can't be bothered to learn how to email and how notifications work, if they can't be bothered to learn how to receive messages for every transaction they make with their credit card, they are not ready to face this modern digital age, especially not when the scammers are trying to find some new creative ways up their sleeve. It's something that happens so frequently in my extended family. There are many unfortunate children in my extended family who are victims of their parents' neglectfulness and would have turned into good children if their parents parents just pay an ounce of attention to them. Not to mention, these children ended up spending loads of cash on mobile games without their parents' knowledge. They didn't know that permanently linking their credit card to their Google account would lead into children borrowing their account to spend money on microtransactions. Ninja is just saying what Captain Obvious would say, and yet somehow he's the villain in this situation. He's a villain for saying that it's not his responsibility to educate children about progressive topics like racial discrimination and societal issues. I mean, God forbid that he tells parents to watch their children so that they don't get canceled by Twitter warriors for saying the N-word so casually. God forbid that he's telling parents to take some responsibility for once. The unfortunate reality is that there are loads of kids out there being neglected by their parents, and being given technology is an easy exchange for parenting. I totally get that. However, their development as a child is not Ninja's problem, and certainly not the problem of the many other content creators that these children watch. How would he know that the people that he's watching are being neglected by their parents? For all he know, everyone who watches him seems to be doing alright. As someone who personally knew children who got handed so much technology by their parents, as someone who knew people who would abuse their credit card spending, as someone who knew children who have radically different political views than their parents, I just do not see why I should blame all of that to the content creators and YouTube videos that they watch every day, or the content that they consume on the internet in general, when the problem is much closer to home and a lot more effective to be dealt with at home. I'm no fan of Ninja. I think he can get really obnoxious at times, but I'll give credit when he's right. It's not the responsibility of content creators to parent their children and teach them the moral values of life. That's not to say that you can't do that. Go and make whatever anti-bigotry statement you like in your platform, but there will always gonna be bigots watching your content, in the same way that there will always be bigots watching cat videos on the internet, because shock of all shock, there are bigots who like cats, and yet somehow we're living in a time where blaming the cat for not being anti-bigots enough is a valid argument. The reason why Nyan Cat has a rainbow on its back is because rainbow is colorful and pretty, and people like it, not because it's an anti-bigotry statement. This is why being famous sucks. If you're not dealing with crazy psychotic fans or haters, you also have to deal with the clueless outsiders who think that your job sounds like a ritual to spawn Satan. It's not help when those clueless outsiders have to talk to you about how you should become a role model to every children living on planet Earth when you're just one human being and you just simply cannot be a parent to millions if not billions of children who consume your content regularly. It's also not helped by how these outsiders demand that you send a message as if you're a megaphone to their views. That is a responsibility that I am not prepared to take. The reason why I post videos and streams is because it's fun and because they make money and pay the rent. I don't want to make videos that make money and pay the rent that are not fun to make, and I don't want to be famous for doing something that kids do, because that means that I'm gonna have a lot more responsibility than what I already have right now. And if I want to gain subscribers, I'd be posting boring OBS screen recording videos of me reading the text that I found that day and put Brie Larson in the thumbnail with a big arrow pointing at her face. Either that or that angry global warming girl.